Stakeholder engagement. And I have the pleasure of introducing you to our next speaker to take you through the stakeholder engagement. He's the managing director of 4 large companies listed on the Colombo Stock Exchange. He's the chairman of the Cost and Management Accounting Standards Board of CMA Sri Lanka. He has an honours degree in business administration from the University of Sri Jayawardenepura and a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. He holds a postgraduate diploma in Buddhist Studies, a distinction pass that is, and has also read for Masters of Arts in Buddhist Studies from the Postgraduate Institute of Pali and Buddhist Studies of University of Kelaniya. He is the president of the Colombo Young Men's Buddhist Association and also the member of the Economic Council of the De La Salle Brothers Sri Lankan chapter. Ladies and gentlemen, former council member of CA Sri Lanka, corporate leader, and please put your hands together as we take you through the stakeholder engagement, Mr. Mahendra Jayasekera.
Good afternoon to all of you. Honestly, I am not easily overwhelmed, but this audience overwhelms me. It's a great audience. Today, my topic is to talk about the stakeholder engagement in transforming state-owned enterprises. When I talk about state-owned enterprises, I don't want to, or I don't wish to rather, confine myself to these 500 odd state-owned enterprises we are talking about. I want to talk about the SOEs in this sense. Any government intervention in the society, any government intervention in the economy is a state-owned enterprise for me. It could be health, it could be education, it could be judiciary, so on and so forth. The list goes on. Why I am saying that is, any government intervention that is not delivering the purpose for which it is set up has to be transformed. You look at the education sector. We send our child to school, but if we have to send our child to a tuition class, that means the school is not delivering the purpose for which it has been set up. So we should discuss this SOE from that point of view, without restricting ourselves, confining ourselves, discussing about the state-owned enterprises within this definition we have been talking about. Any state-owned enterprise, any institution that is not delivering the purpose, achieving the purpose for which it has been set up, then it has to be transformed. And transformation is not easy. Transformation is not easy. I am not going to put up any slides here because this is somewhat of a political topic. You can create your own slides in your mind. You can have your own interpretation. You can have your own opinion about what I am going to say. I will tell you what I have in mind, what I am seeing, what I am observing, what I am thinking about this whole thing. I have certain amount of experience in dealing with state-owned enterprises. Of my 29 years of work life, 25 years have been dealing with transformed state-owned enterprise. The companies I run have been parts of a state-owned enterprise, a huge state-owned enterprise. Ceylon Ceramics Corporation, which was privatized in 1994. I had the bad fortune of having to run this monstrous Lanka Ceramic PLC starting 1999. Starting 1999, I was barely 31, 32, 33 years maybe. And I saw for myself what kind of political interference a man running a SOE would face. I faced the brunt of political interference in a privatized state-owned enterprise. I faced the brunt of union interference in a privatized state-owned enterprise. I saw for myself how these organizations had been run. I saw for myself how these organizations had made appointments. I saw for myself how these organizations had made investments. And considering the greater good of subsidiaries, of course, we had to shut down those factories, lay off 4,000 to 5,000 people to keep the rest of the companies alive. So that is exactly what we are talking about. How do we transform these institutions that are not delivering its purpose or their purpose to keep the rest of the economy alive? To keep the rest of the economy alive. So when we talk about stakeholder transformation, we need to identify who the stakeholders are. Who are the stakeholders we have to engage in transforming state-owned enterprises? Number one stakeholder, in my experience, is politicians and their families. That is the number one stakeholder. Why I am saying that? About 10, 15 years ago, I have this personal experience. We suspended an employee for assaulting his superior. I got a few calls. Now this is after 15 years of privatization. I get a call from politician asking me to take him back. I ignored. Second time he called, I said, Mr. Minister, this is the problem. I described the problem, and I said, he cannot be taken back. So he said, yes, I understand. No problem. I will not call you again. So after 1 or 2 months, another politician calls. A very prominent politician in the height of his power, has been, notorious for various things. And he calls me. He says, this man has helped me. You have to take him back. So I said, okay, I will look into it. I kept quiet. After another month or so, he calls me again. I told you, you haven't done anything. Can you do something? Then I said, yes, I'll try to do something. And I kept the phone. But I didn't do anything. Third time, one day I was having lunch at home. He calls me. He said, I told you twice. You have to take him back. I'm not going to call you again. I was shivering. Actually, as I speak, I shiver. I was shivering. I kept the phone. I was trying to calm down. After about 4 or 5 minutes, I called him back. And I said, Mr. Minister, you are telling me to do something that I can't do. Because he may have helped you, but this is his character. This is what he did. I can't take him back. If I take that person back, I will not be able to run these companies. You come and sit in my chair tomorrow. I have no problem. I'll go home. Then he said, Ayyo, Mr. Jayasekera, I didn't know. You should have told me this. I'm not going to call you again. Imagine, had I heeded that call, the company's iron would have collapsed. Some of you in this audience may be having worst experiences. So that is why I am saying politicians and their families is the first stakeholder. Then comes unions. The unions and their heads, the leaders, because I have faced the brunt of the union leadership interfering with the running of companies. Then we have employees of state-owned enterprises who are big stakeholders. Then we have religious institutions. The Buddhist church is a major stakeholder in transforming SOEs. Catholic Church is a major stakeholder. And to a lesser extent, Islamic and probably the Hindu Church. Why I'm saying this is through the associations I am involved in, we are trying to engage these stakeholder groups to build, formulate a minimum common agenda for this country. I myself have been involved in talking to these various stakeholder groups, trying to build a minimum common agenda for this country. And that is why I understand why the stakeholder engagement is necessary and why the stakeholder engagement, creation of the stakeholder engagement is so difficult. Why it is difficult? As a stakeholder, after these groups, comes general public. How do you engage general public? Millions of people in the country. You drill down and see how this general public can be approached. You have business chambers represented by large corporates. Then you have small and medium scale enterprises, chambers, associations, even associations like Three-Wheelers Association, Private Bus Owners Association, Fishermen's Association, School Van Association, Carpenters Association, Tilers Association, Bakery Association. All these people are stakeholders. Consumer groups, major stakeholders in transforming SOEs. But what we have to understand is they are not on the same page when it comes to transformation of SOEs. They all have different perspectives. Recently, through the associations I'm involved in, we were talking to a group of Buddhist monks about the need for transform SOEs. And one Buddhist monk said, when we spoke about SOE transformations, he said, Mahatheo, රාජ්‍ය දේපල පෞද්ගලිකකරණය කරනවට අපි විරුද්ධයි කියලා. Then I told him, take a piece of paper and write down the names of people who are chairing these institutions. Write down the names of the directors in the boards of these institutions. And then write down their who's who. Who's who are these people? And then you will understand, okay, maybe they are the people who told me that state-owned enterprise transformation is not necessary. So it's a difficult task because they all have different perspectives. I will tell you what their perspectives are. Because we see this as a difficult thing, we don't take the right choice. We continue with the bad choice. we continue with the wrong choice because we have no choice but to continue with the wrong choice. We never look at the right choice because it is very difficult. So in doing that, what have we done? What have our parents done? For the last 70 years, we have stood on the wrong side of the history of this country. We have not been able to walk to the right side of the history of this country because we have seen this as a difficult task and we haven't engaged ourselves in doing what is difficult. And we have to realize the bad choice is not the right choice. So who wishes to transform these state-owned enterprises? You think the politicians and their families want to transform these state-owned enterprises? You have the answer. I will not answer. Because their livelihood depends on the state-owned enterprises. So they are not going to transform state-owned enterprises. It is not in their interest. State-owned enterprises, from another point of view, these 500 odd state-owned enterprises we are talking about have 2,500 appointments to be made. Any political party coming to power has to make over 2,500 appointments to these SOEs. Chairman, Director General, boards of directors, consultants, advisors, the list goes on. So that is how they keep their kith and kin employed. That is how they return favors to their friends. And that is how they run their political campaigns. So you have to ask whether they will be interested in transforming SOEs. The key decision makers themselves, are they willing to transform SOEs? We are talking of SOE transformation here, but is it fruitful? They are not. And you think the union leaders are willing to transform these state-owned enterprises? No. They don't. Why should they? Because they enjoy huge amount of perks and privileges. They have their separate officers, they have vehicles allocated to them, the telephones allocated to them. They have their empires inside the state-owned enterprise. Those who are working in state-owned enterprises here know what I am talking about. So it is not in their interest to transform state-owned enterprises. So how do you create this stakeholder engagement then? Then you think employees are willing to do this? You have state employees who are employed in the state sector, whether they are willing to transform their own enterprise. Is it to their advantage? You will have the answer. Because these people go and influence even the religious institutions that, this should not be done. These are national assets, right? This is inimical to national interest. Then the religious institutions, being so gullible, I must say, right, they also oppose state-owned enterprise transformations. So this is not an easy subject we are talking about. Stakeholder engagement in transforming SO is extremely difficult because of that. Political power, union power, and also corporate power. Honestly, I believe certain corporates are also against state-owned transformation. Because there are lots of corporates who build businesses around state-owned enterprises. And their business is also making money as suppliers and service providers to these state-owned enterprises. So there is a huge, hidden corporate lobby against state-owned enterprise transformation. And then corruption. Corruption is, we talk about corruption is rooted in state-owned enterprises. Corruption breeds in state-owned enterprises, and corruption flourishes in state-owned enterprises. So then, how do we get this engagement? How do we create stakeholder engagement to transform these state-owned enterprises, which is a crying need crying need in this country, because we have heard, right, these enterprises this year they are projected to lose over ₹1 trillion really. And that loss of trillion rupees will deprive our children of education, deprive our low-income groups of quality health care, deprive all of us of quality infrastructure in this country. We are interested in talking about state-owned transformation, enterprise transformation, but the key stakeholders, all other key stakeholders are not interested. So how do we create this engagement? How do we create this engagement? Now here comes what we have to do. Right at the beginning, I said, for me, any state-owned enterprise that is not achieving its purpose has to be transformed. We were talking about transformation of self yesterday morning. Then society, corporate, and the country. Have we understood the purpose of life? What is our purpose? We are talking of state-owned enterprises not achieving their purpose. What is our purpose? What is the purpose of our life? Purpose of our life, to me, is doing the right thing. We have to do the right thing. We have to ask ourselves, are we doing the right thing? Most of the time, we are very complacent, not doing the wrong thing. Not doing the wrong thing is not doing the right thing. It's not equal to doing the right thing. So we have to ask ourselves whether we are doing the right thing. So defining the purpose of life comes from education. Defining the purpose of life comes from education. Now, yes, a few days ago, I was telling an old friend of mine that I have to deliver this speech at the institute. So he asked me, how many accountants in this country? So I said, maybe 7,000, 8,000. So he said, are we still looking for an accountable leader? And I said, yes, we are still looking for an accountable leader. How many lawyers in this country? Are we still looking for a law-abiding leader? We don't have to take the onus ourselves as accountants. What is the profession that is predominantly represented in Parliament? Legal profession. We have had presidents, prime ministers, ministers, lawyers. But is there justice and fair play in this country? Yesterday, Financial Times editorial said, judiciary failed to deliver justice in the case of bond scam. This is what the editorial said. So have we heard inside Parliament people talking about justice and fair play? No. So that means the education has not sharpened our skills. Education has not sharpened the purpose of our realization as to what our purpose is. I want to ask you, in our family, we are the stakeholder in our family. When we live with our siblings, right, as a stakeholder, what do we demand from our parents? Do we demand equal love? Mallita වැඩි ආදරේ මට වැඩිය? Don't we demand that? Don't we demand equal quality clothes, equal quality education? And finally, we demand equal distribution of wealth. We are a stakeholder. Then you go to school, you demand equal rights, equal opportunity, non-discrimination. Then you come to work, a good pay, reasonable pay, non-discrimination, equal opportunity. compliance with labor laws, we demand. But as a stakeholder of society, what do we demand? Are we making our demands? From next month, most of you will pay at least 50% more tax. At least 50% more tax. Are you demanding people to say, look, we account for every cent of your tax money? No. I wonder. Because I account for every cent of the money the companies I'm running have. I account for every single cent of the money run by the associations I run. But have you heard any politician coming on stage and telling, look, if I come to power, I am going to account for every cent of tax money you pay? I haven't heard. So we are not making that demand. What we have to understand is, there is this about 1 to 1.5 million people who feed on state-owned enterprises, who try to shut the opportunities for rest of the 20 million people. And they come and tell you, talking about SOE transformation, talking about politics is not for you. It is not for professionals. It's bad. And doing that, 20 million people have been made the minority. By this minority, 1.5 million people. As educated people, as professionals, I believe we have a duty to unlock this whole thing for these 20 million people. So what we have to understand is, as people, we have our families, we have our stories, we have our dreams, we have our purposes. We have to create an environment for our families to flourish. We have to create an environment for our families to tell good stories. We have to create an environment for our families and us to have good dreams and make our dreams come true and realize our aspirations. But when we come to this challenge of stakeholder engagement, what do we do? What do we do? We try to run away. How many of you are trying to leave this country? Please don't put your hand up, because I am sure this whole audience will get destroyed if people who want to migrate put up their hand and say, look, I want to migrate. But I know vast majority of this audience wish to migrate because they think this cannot be done. So my point is, state-owned enterprise transformation needs building good leadership, who believe in transformation, who does not have personal interest in carrying on with these state-owned enterprises. Now, what is the right leadership? We need to build through engagement of stakeholders to carry on with the state-owned enterprise transformation. Quran says, chapter 2, 247, choose leaders by merit. What does that mean? What does merit mean? The people who follow the teachings of Islam. Good people who don't steal, who don't rob, who live ethical lives, who help other people. That's the leadership they have to create. Have we done that? Catholicism, Politics of Jesus, written in 1972. I don't know how many of you have read. Talks about, finally, the concept of creating ethical leadership. Ethical leadership is not people who have faith in God, in my opinion. People the God can trust. Some people think, just because we have faith in God, we go to heaven. In my opinion, no. We have to ask ourselves whether the God can have faith in us. That's the ethical conduct. I am not going to surround myself with people whom I cannot trust. You think God is going to be different? God is not going to take anybody near him whom he can't trust. So we need to create that leadership. Hinduism equals leaders to God. That is why this, practice of addressing leaders, Lord, come from Hinduism. They equal leaders to God. Leaders are supposed to behave like God. Buddhism, same thing. Buddhism, I always talk about this subject, and we say, actually, Buddhism talks about a limited citizenship theory, which says if you are not electing ethical and selfless people to government, you are not a citizen of that country. That's what Buddhism says. You are just a permanent resident. You go to Australia and apply for permanent residency. You are not worried about how Australia is going to be run, who is going to run it, how it is going to be run. You are there to go and make some money, buy a house, live a life and just die and disappear. That is why in those countries, they put you through interviews and exams before you are given citizenship, because they want to test your ability to think as a citizen. If you cannot think as a citizen, to elect ethical and selfless people to government, that means you are not a citizen. That's what Quran says, that's what Catholicism says, that's what Hinduism says, that's what Buddhism says. We haven't done that, and our answer to that is just run away, because we think it is difficult. So we need to do this. Nobody else is going to do this. SOE transformation, nobody is going to do it. We have to do this. We have to create this conversation. We have to create this conversation that this transformation is necessary. We have 5,000 accountants in this country. One accountant for every 5,000 people. All professionals put together, I am sure we have a professional for every 1,000 people in this country. If all professionals understand the purpose of life, the purpose of education, which is being of service to society, then you will make this engagement. But in making this engagement, you will also realize, my time is up, you will also realize that there is a conflict between right and wrong. You should be mindful of how to choose right from wrong, and try to do the right thing. Create the right conversation that this has to be done. And this is the only way we can transform this country. We transform ourselves, we transform our country. And in doing that, very briefly, you have to be your own champion. Otherwise, people will not listen to you. In what you do, you should be good at what you are doing. Be a champion, and then you will engage stakeholders. Otherwise, people will say, he has not done his job properly, so why should we listen to him or her? Sometimes, the progress of countries can skip generations. In Sri Lanka, the progress of this country has skipped generations. So we have a few generations of this country have missed this progress. We have to take a decision whether we are going to let this generation also to skip this progress. Next generation and the generation to come. You have to decide whether you are willing to make this conversation. For 1.5 days, you have been standing down. I want to see how many of you have the courage to stand up and say, yes, we need to create this conversation, and I am going to actively contribute to this conversation. How many of you have the courage to stand up and say, after standing down for so long, that, yes, I am going to do this? Nobody. Nobody. Okay, on another occasion, I'll ask you this question, and it has been a great honor to speak to you this afternoon. Thank you.
You guys are very shy, aren't you? I saw a few hands going up instead of standing. But yes, with that enthusiasm, we're going to move on to our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, on Transform Country. And we see full house now, only just a few seats here.